about AI, the hype and reality.
Certainly.
Where do we stand on AI? What's the impact going to be, and where are we in the journey of AI adoption?
Adoption, first off, was surprisingly high. I think, at F2, I think just the nature of who we are, we come from the industry. And so we've seen these cycles of hype, over promise, money, tons of venture capital flows into these like ideas and companies that we look at. We're like, there's no freaking way any of our clients are, when we were making the tech decisions, that we would ever use these tools. Like they're not built to be sustainable. They're not built to be long term. They're built to kind of garner capital and to get startup funding, and then kind of they all die. AI is, I would say, in 27 years of being in the industry, as close to a norm breaker here as I've seen. I think that part of the reason why we're seeing higher levels of adoption than we had planned on or we'd expected is because the evidence of its benefit and its value versus the cost is so extreme. And there are pockets of AI. Right? So, and to back up a little bit, one of the things that F2 does, and I didn't mention this before, but we run the largest cohort of national wealth management CTOs and COOs in the country, about 200 of the top decision makers in technology. We're on our 7th year. And so we do 5 research projects a year, closed within the audience itself. And it's really just for the benefit of the CTOs and COOs in the industry. But we've done 2 studies on trends in AI now going back almost 3 years. And what we saw, we just closed our most recent survey, is the penetration of specifically of note-taking AI sort of conversational tracking is vastly, it's no longer in the nascent sort of try it phase. It's in the, oh my God, if you're not using this, like you're
Right.
seriously behind. It's akin to an additional administrative assistant literally sitting on every single phone call, taking all the notes and then getting that into the CRM and then getting all that information sort of back to you when you have that next conversation with your client. And the time payback for a producing advisor or really anybody working with clients or within the wealth management organization is measured in hours per week, up to 4 hours per week of time save by not having to do some of the sort of operational tasks around client experience, task initiation, et cetera, which is exceptional. The other ones are utilization of AI to create context for messaging. You always have to review it. I think we're still at a regulatory era where we're not going to see that automatically send AI generated wording and context to investors, but it can prompt, hey, tell me the story of the performance of this portfolio before I sit down with my client. Boom, right? Like, oh, that just saved me 45 minutes of reading through stuff. And it's actually going to pick up some trends that I missed. I still have to deliver the message. And so that's what we're seeing a tremendous amount of adoption. It's going to lead to better and more frequent and more high quality client interactions. I think that's fantastic for us as an industry. It bolsters the trust of advisors with clients. And it also starts to address some of the aging advisor issues where we've got advisors that are getting older and older. We know we don't have a crop of new ones coming into the industry like we had in previous years. AI will enable advisors to continue to deliver high level of service, but also manage more clients at the same time. I think it's kind of like its timing is perfect. And so that was at Future Proof. That was one of the big things we're seeing that within our clients as well. And I think we're going to, I project that by the end of the year, half of the advisory businesses in this country will have some form of AI note-taking plugin CRM type of technology.
I mean, they're so good and they're so relatively affordable, and they really do a great job of picking it up, and they seem to get better all the time. I mean, it seems like we're measuring progress not in terms of years, but quarters or even months in terms of how this technology is getting better all the time. Where are you seeing the adoption curve, Michael?
What Doug said really resonated with me. For the most part, I agree. But I think, the family office and the trust technology space is kind of behind the curve, right? It's not as dynamic or innovative, right? So, I tell my family office clients really, actively explore it, but do it with a healthy degree of skepticism, right? And I say that because I really, the key I think is to understand their use cases and what's the real value, right? So some it's a no-brainer, right? There's intelligent document processing, predictive analytics, data aggregation are big kind of in the family office space. But a lot of like what I'm seeing too is just marketed is kind of like noise and rebranding automation that was already there, right? So
I think certainly one of the biggest areas around alternative investment data management, right? That seems like in
mhm.
the past, pre AI, OCR didn't really work. You had so much information's unstructured, tied up in documents, locked into a PDF, and now it seems like AI and you have specific providers on that front that are doing that. Arch, Canoe, deploying technology on that front to be able to unlock that. I think these family offices sit on a ton of technology, or I should say data, and don't necessarily have the means to be able to harness that technology in an efficient way to create that kind of that data moat, and be able to create, like you said, Doug, to create a narrative on what happened with my investment portfolio over the past month or the past quarter. That could take an hour, 2 hours. AI can quickly do that, create a draft that then needs to be reviewed and edited and put into the correct context and tone. But you're certainly seeing the ability to kind of crunch a lot of information really easily. What's next on the AI curve? We could certainly generative AI is out there, AI agents. Where do we see the next wave of adoption coming with AI?
Yeah, I think the agentic stuff is the next logical conclusion. We're already listening. We're taking notes. We're picking up on tasks. It is a fairly simple, and already a fairly well-worn path through robotic process automation and some of the other sort of task management tools that have been around for 20 years. Is to start to put some of those tasks and actions into play. And agentic is just sort of it's multi-step. It's able to hear you say, "Hey, let's we've got a new payee. We need to start establishing. We need to set up that payee in our accounting system." It knows what information to go get. It checks whether or not that payee has already been set up on a different client, so we already have some of the payment information. It initiates a task for an operations person to ensure that the calendar for payments gets set up correctly. Sort of manages that all the way through to completion. And all you had to really do is just in a client conversation start to talk about adding a payee for a family office, and that saves a ton of time. And it also there's parts of human operations and human client and wealth management that are fantastic. You've got the brains, you're thinking about things, but we also are inundated with new information. We're inundated with new tasks. Our lives have gotten more complex even with more technology. So tech is like it's relentless, right? It's gonna make sure that damn thing gets done no matter what, and it's gonna always remain open until you get it completed. It's not gonna forget that task was out there, and that saves not only a lot of time, it keeps us out of a lot of compliance problems as well, right? There's no more sort of sloppy. I thought you had it, I had it, fell through the cracks. This stuff gets done.
Every
which is
client's
huge.
consistent, done the same way, right?
Exactly right. And the data, if done correctly, right, there's always a quality factor of how it's implemented. But if done correctly, it's also checking for data quality. It's prompting when it looks like some of the information gathered or entered is incorrect. And it can save, a lot of headaches down the road and a lot of money down the road by being done correctly.
What are you seeing, Michael?
Family office AI assistants could be like managing entire workflows now, right? Like compliance checks to investment analysis, right? I think there's a lot that can be done there, right, at that next level. Again, though, I think we got to be smart about it too. With this powerful tool comes some responsibility, right? So we still need human oversight, ethics, and data governance. So I think we're all kind of learning together, but it's really an exciting time right now for sure.
It certainly doesn't remove the decision making. There's still a need for a human in the loop on many of these things, but for some of these repetitive tasks, it can go off and execute it on a semi-autonomous basis. It's like you can see where the efficiency is going to come from. Obviously, AI is the dominant headline, but there's been a lot of other tech trends out there. What are some of the other wealth tech trends that you guys are seeing that are either impacting the space now or soon to be impacting family offices?
The availability of illiquid securities is predominant. I think there's always been a family office angle to deploy capital in areas that are because of your size and your sort of your ability to invest outside of the markets. It's sort of always been there. I think that those doors open up even wider. I think one of the things that I would expect to see just from economic standpoint, we're already starting to see some indicators of global markets being more, outperforming or being projected to be outperforming the U.S. markets. We've been 20 years now where the U.S. market has generally outperformed global markets. And some of the rails that global, especially global direct investment, need to be deployed is something I would expect to see more and more news about that this year. Do I have multi-currency reporting? Do I have a custodian that can actually deploy capital globally? Do I have a mechanism to actually check on foreign currency reserves and my foreign exchange required to execute internationally? I think that's pretty natural, especially if we're seeing a prolonged or multi-year contraction or recession in the United States, especially with global markets kind of maybe I would say catching up with the U.S. as the U.S. sort of survived COVID better than most. I think we're going to start seeing more of that reporting, workflow, custodial, direct investment, foreign exchange being kind of critical things that aren't being talked about yet, but are going to be required. Everything else is really operations, automation, scalability. How do I spend less money to get the same amount of stuff done? And that AI conversation, CRM, workflow automation, that's a ton of our work. So I'd say that too is a barometer. People are looking to invest to save money and invest so they don't have to keep hiring really expensive humans in their operations.
Yeah, Doug touched on a lot of great points there. If I get a little more granular and I dig into some, I think what I'm seeing is, better, definitely a push towards better data interoperability and then better integrated client experiences, right? So I see that a lot. Cybersecurity was another big focus, certainly in the last, for me, I noticed last 8 to 12 months with, high net worth families really being prime targets. So a lot of interest in that. How do we get assessments? What type of software do we need? That type of thing. So that has been really big. Doug touched on alternative investment administration. That's huge. Other areas that, a lot of focus, digital onboarding, right? Making that whole experience more streamlined, more scalable. And I would think another one that I've seen too, I'll call it portfolio visualization and or kind of entity or family tree visual tools. A lot of that, right? And that's all driven by transparency and personalization, right? How do we dig in here and really take a look at ourselves? So, that's what I'm seeing kind of in the family office space.
Let's take a look out into the future. Obviously, it's a very dynamic market. Things have changed a lot, but where do we see the future of wealth management? Where do we see?
And so I think that the real 2 to 5 years out is going to be, folks are going to continue to realize the value of scalability. They're taking their businesses very serious. They're operating them and managing them like professional businesses, not like, a couple of people that got together 25 years ago and are just managing things on spreadsheets. And but the nature of advice, right? Humans working with humans, I don't really see that changing at all. I think we've been scared as an industry several times during the robo-advisor phase and also in the AI phase that, we get these reporters saying the role of the advisor is dead. The role of humans helping in wealth management is dead, right? Like if you're thinking about being an advisor and you're in college, like forget about it, just go be an AI coder or a prompt engineer, and that's your job. I really don't see that happening at all. Not just from a regulatory standpoint, but just humans dealing with difficult situations want to work with humans. And so I think that less will change than you would expect in 5 years, other than just more maturity.
Doug, and then, Doug hit it big, and I've just seen this increase, dramatically over the past 3 to 5 years is the alternative asset administration, that whole piece. I mean, I don't see that slowing down. That touches a lot of other things like direct indexing. So there's a lot of opportunity around kind of this new thinking or quite frankly, just new ways of doing business that I think translate into technology opportunities.
I think that makes sense. I think you're going to see AI really force the modernization of family offices that we've been talking about for a long time. I think COVID put a good dent in it, making sure these family offices get into the cloud at least, but now you're going to really see them modernize. I think alternative investments, family offices have a high exposure to it, but I think that there is some feeling out there that even could be low, that they could be under allocated by up to 20%. And with all these technology options that are coming available around alt data management, that these family offices are going to be able to without significantly increasing the headcount, be able to take on a higher degree of exposure. I do think on the flip side that, it is such a dynamic space and there are more family offices and multifamily offices. It's this winning business model that you're going to see more entrance into the space from a technology standpoint. And like I say, the good news is there's more options. The bad news is there's more options, right? This confusion will start to reign a little bit in family offices, not knowing quite what to do, being a bit overwhelmed. I guess that's all the more reason to have a guide and have professional help, a consultant help them out on that front. But I think we're in the third inning of this kind of golden age of family office technology for sure.